Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Glazer, and I'm founder CEO of an Acceleration Partners, having led a fully remote company for over 14 years. I'm going to talk to you today about addressing some of the challenges going forward in hybrid work. So we survived 2020, and for a lot of companies, it actually went much better than expected. Some companies transitioned to remote work without any preparation, experience, and under stressful and pretty non-ideal conditions. And while it wasn't perfect, again, work got done, things moved forward, and it was better than expected. So then the next real question for leaders today is what comes next, and how does remote work figure into that future? And many businesses will talk about this can choose from different options. I really don't think there's a going back to 2019. Many of the changes and trends that were already underway when the pandemic happened have just been advanced 5 or 10 years. And I think companies need to decide how remote work will fit into their workplaces. I know from experience that remote work can be highly effective even in non-pandemic times. And I think a lot of companies learned that as well over the past 18 months. Recently, a few CEOs have been coming out with some notable comments on their perception of remote work and hybrid work. So if you ask David Solomon, he'd say he thinks it's an aberration and it's not normal. However, 2 weeks after making this announcement, Goldman Sachs came out and recorded record quarterly revenue and earnings while the company was entirely remote. So there's a little bit of disconnect there. Same with Reed Hastings, who's the CEO of Netflix. He said, "I don't see any positives in remote work." And then, last but not least, a little bit in the disingenuous category for the gentleman whose business model is based on people coming back to the office. You have the CEO of WeWork saying those who are least engaged and are very comfortable working from home. And, a lot of these comments remind me of CEOs in 1998 when the internet was starting to take over an email and they were sort of bragging that they didn't look at their own email. That was something an assistant did. And very few of those people were in their jobs a few years later, and nor very few people would brag that they didn't know how to use email a few years later. And it does feel similarly that we are hitting a transition that some people are embracing and some people are choosing to ignore. And a lot of this has to do with the sunk cost fallacy. So, normally for a decision, the best decision that you can make is really about looking forward and not backwards. But when you've invested a lot of money in offices and your team's making a ton of money and hitting record earnings without them, it's really hard to look at that sunk cost and think, oh, what should I be doing going forward? Not looking at what I did going backwards and the investments I've already made in a certain area. And the topic of our presentation today, we're going to see some fully back to work workplaces. We're going to see some fully remote workplaces. But I think we're going to see the most hybrid workplaces. And honestly, hybrid kind of worries me the most because it's a little less clear what it means in each case. And what I would say is that hybrid needs to be a strategy, not the absence of one or making a decision, or it's going to cause real problems both for leaders in organizations and the employees in those hybrid workplaces. Some companies have responded to remote work or hybrid work by allowing employees to work from anywhere. And there's this question of, does this actually work? Now, I will tell you that while working from anywhere sounds like the best way to maximize flexibility, that concept in itself has a lot of challenges. First, you need to remember that different countries and different states have vastly different employment laws, regulations, taxes, and benefit requirements. And if you're in retail, for example, you may have something called nexus, which means you have to collect sales tax in certain states, even if you only have one employee there. And a single employee in a state could require you to have to collect tax for that entire state. Your company may also have to register and incorporate entities in states or even in countries or counties where an employee moves, which can add significant administrative and legal fees. You may also learn that your company's healthcare plan doesn't cover a certain state, and you have to negotiate and secure coverage that you guarantee to your other employees. And then imagine being in a situation where you have an employee move to a new country. You have to set up an entity there, pay tens of thousands of dollars. You didn't really have a business requirement for them to be there. And then once you've done all of that work, they decide they want to move to a different country. So you're left holding the bag in the old country and then deciding what to do in the new one. So I really recommend not figuring this stuff out as you go. I would be as clear and specific about where you want employees to work, where you're going to allow them to work, so that you don't stretch your organization too thin in trying to support that, particularly if it doesn't support a business need. These are the types of questions that I think leaders in remote workplaces need to answer up front for employees. So, how far from the office can people live? When are they expected to be in the office? Can it be on short notice? Or will they get reasonable expectation of having to come in for an important meeting? How are meetings handled? Are there people in a conference room and then a few people kind of zooming in? Or are all meetings handled so everyone's on the same page? How are you going to level the playing field for people who are out of sight in terms of performance reviews and connection opportunities? And then how are you going to handle sort of blue collar, white collar divisions? There may be some organizations where the frontline employees have to be in person to deliver the product or service, but their managers don't. And obviously, be disconnected from your employees, even if you can, is not a great solution. So you need to find ways where there's a divide about people who have to be in the office and not, and how to get to that balance and equilibrium. The alternative to work from anywhere, and something that we've been doing for a while now, is called the hub model. So we hire people in geographic locations. A few of our hubs are Boston, Philadelphia, Denver, Seattle, London, and Sydney, Australia. And these hubs allow us to define a legal area where we can have employees. They create in-person collaboration. They allow for team building and socializing with regularity. They're also really good for in-person interviewing. And by having everyone in hubs too, even as a hybrid or remote company, our leadership team can fly around to the hubs in 2 weeks, which we're doing soon, and touch all of our employees and meet with them. That's very different than if you have employees so scattered all over the place that you don't have any concentration. The expansion of remote work opportunity, I really think, is going to change the landscape of how people live and work. I think this suburb to city bridge that has existed for decades is closing. And I define that as, a lot of people start working in a city when they're younger and earlier in their career, and then they move to a suburb because they're building families or having families or want more land. But they continue to commute back to that job in the city and deal with the added commute to get the balance of the good job and the extra space that they want. And Upwork recently asked people and about kind of where they were going to go after the pandemic. And almost 55% said they wanted to relocate over 2 hours away more from their current location. So I really think the bridge is closing. I think people that want to live and work in cities will do so. I think that people that want to live outside of cities will be increasingly not looking to commute into a city 5 days a week. And I think the companies that aren't prepared to offer remote work are going to be caught pretty flat-footed in a changing world. Particularly the folks who are out there, a lot of the experienced mid or late career folks who can make up the majority of your leadership roles or management teams. I really like this notion. It's something we practice at Acceleration Partner, kind of this concept of fly your flag. So be transparent about who you are and value as an employee. Again, what is your style of hybrid work? So we really try not to hide these things. Our core values are own it, embrace relationships, and excel and improve. We are a remote work company. We are a client service organization, and we're extremely fast paced. And while we've had a lot of folks leave some great reviews for us on Glassdoor, I like that these are some of the cons from people that have actually left positive reviews, talking to prospective employees about what it's like to work here. So, working from home is not a cushy job. You need to be self-motivated. It's a very fast-moving environment. We're trying to portray an honest picture of what it looks like to work in our version of our culture, rather than trying to be everything to everyone. So some key takeaways. I just don't think we're going back to the old way of work. I think companies need to be really clear about their strategy. As I said before, hybrid needs to be a strategy in itself, not the absence of one. You need to ensure that your in-office employees and remote employees have a level playing field, and you need to try to make your meetings inclusive and equal for all your employees. So thanks very much for listening in on this. I have some more resources for virtual teams at robertglazer.com/virtual. Some of the tools and technologies that help support a virtual or hybrid work experience. I also just released a book, How to Thrive in the Virtual Workplace, which you can find at robertglazer.com/thrive. And last but not least, I've got a course out that covers a lot of the material in the book, and that's Thriving in the New World of Remote Work. And it's targeted both towards employees and towards managers and leaders of organizations. And that's available at remote-course.com. And for a limited time, I've used code Prezi. That course is only $40 instead of $79. So thanks very much, and hopefully you have some good insights on how to thrive in this new world of remote and hybrid work.